Hello and welcome. In this lesson, we're going to be talking about polynomial extrema. The absolute maximum of a polynomial is the point that represents the greatest value of the function. In other words, for any input, what's the greatest output I can get? And we can visualize that with an upside down parabola where there's one point that's greater than any others, one output value that's greater than any others. The absolute minimum of a polynomial is the point that represents the least value of a function. In other words, a parabola that's concave up, there's one point, one output value that's the least. The relative maximum of a polynomial is the point that represents the greatest value of a function over an interval. So in other words, here we have the greatest value for all like negative values of x, but it doesn't represent the greatest output value that the function will ever achieve, which we see further on to the right. But for its little space, for its little area that we're looking at over on the left, it is the highest peak. And a relative minimum of a polynomial is the point that represents the least value of a function over an interval. So here on the positive values of x, or the positive inputs, we have a lowest value. But if we look at the polynomial overall, the graph overall, it isn't the absolute lowest. It is just a low point for the interval of like 0 to 4, 0 to 5, so on and so forth. Now, a point of inflection is the point at which the graph of a polynomial switches from concave up to concave down, or vice versa, concave down to concave up. So here we have a function, if we trace it left to right, it starts concave down, and then at some point it switches to concave up. And the point at which it switches is known as our inflection point. Let's look at an example. Here we have a polynomial, and its domain has been restricted from -2 up to 6. Its absolute maximum is at 666. Its absolute minimum is 3, -15. Its relative maximum is -1, 17. Its relative minimum is -2, 10. And its inflection point is 1, 1. I hope this video is helpful and that you visit us again.